Each step you validate, always try to stick as close as to the reality as you can. It's very important, and probably has a minimum viable product first and go to the market as soon as you can, because on the market you will still discover many things that are different than what you were thinking. It's very important to stick to the as close as you can at each step to the reality.
Welcome, MedTech Gurus. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Philippe Bencteux, founder and president of RoboCath, a global leader in robotic solutions dedicated to interventional cardiology. Founded in 2009, RoboCath designs, develops, and markets smart robotic platforms to treat cardiovascular and neurovascular diseases. Philippe is not only a neuroradiologist, but also a visionary entrepreneur who has helped pioneer vascular robotics. Under his leadership, RoboCath launched its first robotic solution, R1, which achieved CE and NMPA certifications and demonstrated more than 98% technical success in multi-center studies with no major adverse cardiovascular events. Now, RoboCath is launching the world's first in-human clinical study evaluating its second-generation robotic system in coronary artery disease, an important milestone in the evolution of robotic-assisted angioplasty. The new platform builds on years of clinical and technological expertise and introduces unprecedented capabilities designed for increasingly complex coronary procedures. Today, Philippe will share with us the innovation behind RoboCath's next-generation robotics platform, the lessons from scaling globally, and what the future of robotic interventional cardiology looks like. Hey, Philippe, are you ready to be our guru today?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, we're excited to have you. So tell us something fun or interesting about yourself or your family so we can get to know you a little better.
Well, I don't know if it's so much fun, but I can share with you a bit of background regarding my education, perhaps. Well, I'm the product of a teacher as a father and an antique dealer as a mother. And so probably it's not genetic, but I have a scientific background somehow in terms of education. And probably my imagination nurtured by my mother with the antique things, and it's a sort of interesting thing. And so at the end of my high school, I had to choose between, it was my choice, but to choose between a track to become an engineer or medical studies. It's very different, probably, but finally I chose, of course, medical studies, it looks like. But at the end of the day, science caught up with me. And during my medical studies, I had idea of developments, and I will tell you about robotics, vascular robotics.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, the antiques and teaching really, I'm sure there are a lot of history lessons and a lot of conversation around the kitchen table when you were growing up.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, for sure. So, Philippe, you founded RoboCath in 2009. What was the original clinical insight that led you to believe that robotics could fundamentally improve coronary interventions? Can you provide us a little insight there?
Sure. So I chose the radiology as a specialty. And so I was a resident, and then I had to wait for 1 year for a senior resident position. And during this year, I worked in a remote hospital. And here I discovered that we didn't have the same level of care. And so it was not exactly the same medicine, the same level of expertise. And I experienced a situation where I saw patients die of lack of expertise, and it was part of a spark. The other part was during this year. It was the year of the Lindbergh intervention between New York and Strasbourg in France, and so there was an intervention, a surgical intervention performed between those cross-border intervention. And it was in 2001. So it's a long time ago. And so, again, it was the 11, no, so I don't, when was the attentat? Perhaps we make a pause, but the attentat, on the Twin Towers, which year was that?
Yeah, that was 2001. Yeah.
2001. Whoa, it's so long ago. And so, so this was the spark of the founding of the company. I had the idea of if we can perform robotic intervention, so complex interventions from far away, it would be really great to be able to robotize the endovascular intervention and save lives, because there are situations in emergency, vascular emergencies, such as hemorrhage shock or thrombosis, such as myocardial infarction or stroke, where you need to perform an emergency endovascular intervention. And here we go. So I thought it would be much more interesting in the endovascular field to robotize those interventions. And again, it was really the spark of the project I led, and so I founded the company a few years later, and here we go.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Yeah, I was intrigued by your discussion of the rural or outlying hospitals, right? Because that time delay, I think, for getting treatment really speaks to things like robotics to be able to help get that care to those patients without having to wait for transport and all that. And I think that's a real opportunity. Is that what you're seeing?
Yes, I think there is a huge potential for improvement in the care of the population here, because we are talking for stroke, for example, of the second leading cause of death, and the first cause of chronic disability, acquired chronic disability. So here we are talking about massive potential of improvement in the care of this, only talking about stroke, but there are many other opportunities in the endovascular field.
Yeah, for sure. And then your first robotic platform, the R1, if I have this right, achieved more than a 98% technical success in the clinical studies with no major adverse events. So, Philippe, achieving success like this obviously required significant collaboration. So, what were some of the best practices that you and your team used to achieve this type of outcome?
Well, here I think what is very important is the need, and so define the need and stick to the need, and so here it's the advantage to have a medical doctor as a founder, some way, and so I defined it. I defined that there was three pillars to the need. First, the robotic solution had to be very precise and efficient. Second, it has to be user friendly. And when we say user friendly, it's not only the ease of use; it's also to be able to adapt to all the devices that the physicians are using during their interventions, and there are so many. And third, it had to be affordable, and we know the constraints on the hospitals today. So these were the three pillars. And we had the chance to have a great CTO in the company, which is Bruno Fournier, who was able to develop a great technology to address these three pillars, bionic technology, and it's very interesting, which is on the market today.
Yeah, I like that. And I want to focus on your second pillar for just a second, that user friendly. And I may put you on the spot a little bit, but getting that to talk to other devices and manage the workflow, did you find that took a lot of communication and collaboration?
Well, so the ease of use, being able to work with all the devices is very important. And again, it was to me an important thing as a physician. And so we can see that there is a collaboration between Siemens and Stryker, because they are developing specific devices and probably that their robot won't be able to work with all the devices. So we take at heart to develop a robotic solution able to work with all type of devices and all brands. But saying that, we know that the future will be to some intelligent devices, bringing more data or being able to perform some specific actions. So this is the future of devices here, and it's very of much importance to the device industry, I think.
Yeah, no doubt. And with that, right, you now have launched your first in human study for your second generation robot, right? So what are the major technical achievements or advancements in this new system, and how does it address the increasing complexity of the coronary procedures? Without giving away trade secrets, can you give us a little idea where you're headed with that?
Well, I would say, again, sticking to the need, this need, we learned much from the market thanks to our first generation of robots.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is what is very interesting. And finally, with Corendus Siemens, we are the only one, RoboCath, to have a first generation of the market and learning from this experience and gathering much data. And so what we learned, of course, is where physicians are really expecting robotics is for complex interventions, because there are very long interventions where the physician is staying aside the patients, long hours with a lead apron, bending over the patients. It's very, very tiring. And their working conditions are really awful. And so here, this is where we are expecting a robotic solution, which would be able to deal with several devices, and so this is what were identified as the best opportunities for the physicians. And again, this is where they were expecting robotics. And so to deal with both those complex interventions, we had to deal with many devices. And so having a robotic solution with the first generation able to take care of two devices was not enough. And Corendus experienced the same situation. Again, there is probably a question of the readiness of the technology here. And so this is how we built a comprehensive robotic solution able to deal with all those devices.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And, looking at the vascular interventional robotics market, from what I could see, it's projected to grow rapidly over the next several years. Is the working conditions in some of the rural hospitals, is that's what driving adoption, or what are the factors that are driving this type of adoption, in your opinion?
Well, I think it's more complex than that. But, of course, there is the working condition. Really, they are awful. And so they love their job because it's just incredible to be able to treat only through a puncture a patient and save life through a puncture. Is performing somehow a surgical intervention through a puncture is great. But saying that, they put their life at risk working under X-rays. They are the most exposed to radiation, and so they have an increased risk of cataract and cancer. And it's again, it's insane. So they put lead apron on to try to protect themselves, but it doesn't cover the head, the leg, the arms, and so even this lead apron is responsible for an increased risk of musculoskeletal disorders. Okay, so they have working conditions that are awful. But I think that the main point is the enhancing of the intervention. Intervention. And this is what we experience in other fields, such as soft tissue surgery, as orthopedics. And this is what is driving their growth, 2-digit growth. And it's very impressive. And this is what should drive the adoption in robotics. Furthermore, the digitalization of the physician somehow will bring many opportunities. And also, we told a bit about that, is to work remotely. And we are the most advanced in these remote developments. And so being able to reach people in remote areas, and we know that more than the majority of the population don't have access to such expertise, will be a of massive interest for the population.
So what we're seeing is, because in interventional radiology, especially in cardiology and neurology, the vasculature is really tiny, and I would think the precision of the robotics would really help us in those tight areas. Is that also part of what's driving this?
Yeah, sure. This is where robotics is incredible and really amazing. It's the precision, the capability to master the whole intervention, all the devices. And so it's at a level that human is not able to reach. And so all this will be emphasized by thanks to intelligent devices in the future. So it's very impressive what robotics is able to achieve now.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And we touched on this a little bit, but robotic platforms often perform well technically, but face some real world barriers. And I'm just curious to get a little bit on the design end. How did you design the RoboCath system to integrate so seamlessly into existing cath labs and remain compatible with other devices?
Well, we go back to the need and to be able to again answer the need. And so it had to be quite transparent, seamless, and meaning that you don't have to waste time because of the robotic solution. It has to be very intuitive, and it was what brought the success of also intuitive surgical. It was again a pillar of our development. And so thanks to this bionic technology, I mean, it mimics what you do with your fingers. It's so easy to use and it's so fast to use. You don't waste time. It's already great, not wasting time with a robotic solution. And we hope that with our development in the future, we will be even able to save time.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And I'm thinking about now your first in human trials, right? So a lot of our listeners out there are entrepreneurs or soon to be entrepreneurs, and conducting a first in human trial is really a major milestone. So, what were some of the clinical and regulatory considerations that you had to think about when moving from proven technology to the next generation platforms? Can you help us out with that and what some of the lessons learned?
Well, I'm sorry, but regarding this question, I'm not sure, but finally, the second generation has to go through all the steps, and because it's so different, only the core technology is the same. And but even this one, we were able to miniaturize it, and so miniaturized that it's finally okay. It does the same. It's always a bionic technology, but the way we do it is also very different. And so we are able to take care of many more devices. So at the end of the day, we have to go through all the clinical and regulatory pathway
No
in Europe
shortcuts, right?
and in the US. And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
unfortunately, so I don't have much to propose here for
Yeah.
the one who listen to us.
Yeah, gotcha. And then, you and your team have scaled from being a French startup to global deployments in Europe, Africa, and China, which is no small feat. What were some of those hurdles that you had to face with international expansion, and how did you overcome some of those?
Well, we had an opportunistic approach as we found a partner to address the China market, and I think the best way to address such geographies as US or China or Europe is to go through a local partner. This is what I think. I mean. I'm not sure it is the reality, but the cultures are so different between Europe, China, and US that it's probably better to go through a partner to address those markets.
Would that have been like countrywide distributor as a partner?
Yes, so in China we have a distributor, and so this is our partner. But he's not only a distributor; he's a corporate. So he holds a good share of the market of the stents in China. So we thought that it was a good partner to address the China market.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. And Philippe, funding and long-term development timelines are realities in robotic medtech. With to help our gurus and listeners out there, what type of funding strategy and partnership models help RoboCath sustain innovation while you were moving towards commercialization?
Well, so indeed, financing is such an ambitious development is project as is not an easy way. It's not that easy. So we were lucky to find some regional funds and also some deep tech funds on our way to during the developments. And in France, it's we had the opportunity to be able to develop startups, and so there is seed funds and so on. So now facing the scaling financing is perhaps more difficult in Europe. And so we had to find some financing outside of Europe, so in US and in China during our round C. And to my point of view, I think here for such companies developing so ambitious robotic solution for surgery, you're right. It's time consuming. It's capital intensive. And so I think it's difficult to do not go through a corporate financing. And so this is what we did. And the last round, we had 3 corporates who wanted to invest in the company. And so we had to choose. We chose one. And so I think it's they bring a long-term strategic vision, and it reassures the shareholders and so on. So it's good to onboard a strategic.
Yeah, that's very helpful, right? Because you're right, it does help kind of guide you and gives you some additional depth, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, for sure. So, Philippe, robotics is increasingly intersecting with AI and digital connectivity. How do you see this intelligent automation evolving within interventional cardiology over the next decade?
Well, it's a big topic here. We are bringing data, new data, very interesting data of what the physician is doing with his fingers in real time during the intervention, and mixed with the data of the imaging system. It is bringing many opportunities of automated capabilities, for example. And one I like very much, but I would have thought was science fiction, if you had told me that earlier, is to be able to perform autonomous navigation.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had early works on this field. And so you put a target in the vascular tree, and the robot will bring the device to the target autonomously. And it's huge, because the goal somehow where there is to be able to propose the best treatment to everyone, with the best surgeon for everyone, and finally everywhere, even in remote areas, and with healthcare providers at safe. So this is somehow our vision and what is at stake here. And so I think it's huge.
Yeah, that sounds intriguing. When you're talking about that, I was thinking almost like the self-driving car, right? It's kind of the same concept almost.
Yeah, but much easier. We can see that what is experienced autonomous car is very difficult.
Hmm.
And here, finally, you are in a tree in the vasculature. And so finally, you have only to, turn right, left. And I mean, Well, it's not that simple, but it's somehow much simpler than a car, autonomous car.
I would think also, and I'm curious to see if you're finding this, it would probably help with physician fatigue too, right? If a lot of this is just automated, they're just monitoring versus actually doing. Am I heading down the right path with that?
Yeah, you're right. And somehow we are switching from, robotic assistance to finally human assistance. I mean, the human will assist the robot and the robot will do. And so, but we are not exactly there, but it's coming fast.
Yeah, that's intriguing. And then, Philippe, for our medtech founders who are listening in today, especially those building hardware-intensive platforms, what is one critical lesson that you've learned about perseverance or iteration or timing that might help our listeners? Do you have a one best practice that you would suggest to those individuals?
Well, I would say I don't know if I have lesson to give, but to keep step by step, and each step you validate to try to keep to the real life. And so if you can't go in vivo, you try in vitro, and always try to stick as close as to the reality as you can. It's very important, and probably has a minimum viable product first, and go to the market as soon as you can, because on the market you will still discover many things that are different than what you were thinking, even as a radiologist by education, so it's very important to stick to the as close as you can at each step to the reality.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I would think that feedback, right, that you're getting with as you're going those steps of the way is so invaluable, right?
Hope so.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. So, Philippe, this seems like a real exciting time for RoboCath. What's next? What does the future hold for you and your team?
Well, we are in an amazing time today, and so we love what we are experiencing today. And so we are at the commercial stage. At the same time, we are developing our next generation, and so it's so exciting, and so exciting time. And here we are.
Yeah, yeah, that's
And
fantastic.
and having a word about the future, I think that probably. So there is something that we say is in France is no harm, no chocolate. So,
I like that.
and so we have developed a robotic solution. And so now we are thinking about the next step. And so we told about remote caring and remote care, and we told about AI, but there are also the devices. And so here I'm really exciting to think about the next generation of devices now. And this is of much interest here.
Yeah,
Good topic.
yeah.
And curiously, in France, we have many companies developing intelligent devices, either steerable devices or sensitive devices. It's very exciting.
Yeah. It's a great time. It'll be fun to watch where you and your team go from here. So, Philippe, first of all, I'd like to thank and acknowledge you for the time that you spent with us as our guru today. If somebody wants to learn more about RoboCath or connect with you directly, what's the best way to do that? Is there a website or in LinkedIn? How do we learn more?
Yes, you can reach out through our website or through LinkedIn, the RoboCath LinkedIn, or even myself, depending on what is your need.
Oh, that's fantastic. So, Philippe, once again, thank you so much for being our guru today. It was very enjoyable speaking with you.
Thank you. Very, very proud to talk with you, and thank you for your invitation.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to MedTech Gurus. I am Sylvester Harris, your MC. If you want to learn more about Tom and his consulting services, you can go to www.robotics.com. tom@pctmedical.com or email Tom at tom@pctmedical.com. Now, I can be reached at Sylvester Harris, that's SylvesterHarris 5048@gmail.com, and I'd be pleased to discuss any voiceover work that you may want for your company or broadcast. Hey, thanks so much for listening, and catch us on the next episode of MedTech Gurus.